there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's great to be with you on this Friday, November 11th. And tonight, the counting continues. Election officials are still processing ballots, including in Arizona and Nevada. Which party will end up in control of Congress? Our reporters are on the ground with the latest. In Georgia, the race to the runoff has begun. We'll have an update from Atlanta. What will this week's midterm results mean for the Republican Party? We'll have analysis of the GOP's options, all of which could change next week with former President Trump's announcement. If he does run in 2024, what then? Also tonight, a closer look at how colleges are responding to the end of Roe v. Wade. Some are offering students abortion pills. Others are enforcing state restrictions. And today is Veterans Day, honoring America's service members. Harry Smith marks the 40th anniversary of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Let us begin tonight with a projection that just came in from the NBC News Decision Desk. It's one that will make even more history in these midterms. In Oregon, NBC News can project that former State House Speaker Tina Kotek, the Democrat in the governor's race, will win. She declared victory yesterday after other news organizations called that race.
The campaign has been a tremendous journey. I've heard from Oregonians across our beautiful state that they want things to be better. They want problems solved, and they want to be included in the solutions to our toughest challenges. I want to thank my family, especially my wife, Amy, my team, the thousands of volunteers and supporters, and the voters for the privilege to serve as the next governor.
That would make her the second out lesbian governor elected this week. In Massachusetts, we are projecting that the state's Attorney General, Maura Healey, will be its next governor. That is a Democratic pickup in governor's races. But the races for Arizona Senate and governor are still up in the air. At the moment, the Democratic candidates are ahead, but only about 80% of the votes have been counted. In the Senate race, we're characterizing that one as too early to call. Same thing with the governor's race, too early to call. Yesterday, the Republican candidate, Kari Lake, suggested an ulterior motive behind the pace of counting the votes. The chair of Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors scoffed at that.
I think they're doing is slow rolling our victory. They want to take the air out of this movement, and they can't do it.
Quite frankly, it is offensive for Kari Lake to say that these people behind me are slow rolling this when they're working 14 to 18 hours. So I really hope this is the end of that now. We can be patient and respect the results when they come out.
Let's begin with NBC political reporter Vaughn Hilliard, who joins us from Phoenix with more. Vaughn, what's the latest with getting those ballots counted?
Well, in just a couple hours from now, we're looking at about 2 hours from now, Joshua, we are expecting about 80,000 more ballots to be released, those results here at the Maricopa County Tabulation Center here. These ballots could be a key indicator of where this race is going to head, not only in the Senate race, but also the governor's race. The main ballots that we are looking for here at this point are these ballots that were hand-delivered on Tuesday. There's about 290,000 of them counting. For the first time, we are going to see the results of some of those ballots, about 40,000 of them. But those 40,000 should be reflective of the greater 290,000. So if Blake Masters, you're looking at that difference right there. Among the ballots that are released tonight, he needs to win by quite a large gap here in order to have any shot of overcoming Blake Masters in the days ahead. And of course, Kari Lake, she also needs to perform well among this batch that is set to drop tonight. Not by quite the same margin. She is very much still on the hunt here, but we're looking at about 400,000 ballots statewide that still have to be counted. Both of these contests are still very much ball games at this hour.
Talk a little bit more about the pace of the count. Kari Lake obviously has intimated, at least, that she has prevailed in this race and that Arizona officials are just kind of slow walking the announcement. We have no proof of that, but Talk a little bit about some of the factors that have been behind the pace of the count as it is. I know in some states it's because they have to open a lot of envelopes for mail-in ballots or because there are issues with curing certain ballots. What have officials in Arizona been dealing with?
Right. Look, they say, look, we have a long tradition of voting by mail here in the state of Arizona. And it was even complicated further by the fact that there were 290,000 mail ballots that instead of folks mailing them back ahead of time, they came and hand delivered them on Election Day. And here in the state, there's that signature verification process where the county officials, they go and look at the signature on every single envelope carrying a ballot, and they compare it to state records to ensure, in fact, that voter, that legal voter, was in fact the one that filled out the ballot and mailed it back. That takes time. There's also 17,000 ballots that were initially rejected by tabulation machines on Tuesday. Those ballots are here. Those are expected to be a part of the drop tonight. They had to go and scan those as part of a separate machine here. This is a process. And they said, look, everybody is waiting on Arizona because what? The races are close. And the fact is, a lot of these ballots came in here at the last moment. But there's no reason to suggest that these are not secure, safe, or accurate or fair elections here at this time.
Vaughn, what's the mood like in Arizona among Arizonans? I know that those of us further east, a lot of us are kind of waiting on tenterhooks to find out what happens with this race. But as you mentioned, there's a long history of mail-in ballots in Arizona. So I'm sure people there are a little more used to the pace of this count. What do you hear from everyday folks in terms of just the process of getting this counted and what the outcomes might be?
Right. Okay, let's say historically, folks have not been waiting on Arizona. Arizona was a longtime conservative Republican state. Right. You know, it was just assumed that the Republican was going to win. It really wasn't until 2018 when Kyrsten Sinema, the Democrat, she ended up, that process took several days. She ended up winning the U.S. Senate seat here. It was very close. I was here at that time. We were waiting here for days. What happened in 2020? I was here for almost 2 weeks waiting for the tabulation process to go forward here. And so suddenly in the last 3 election cycles, the races here politically have been close. Arizonans, yes, they are frustrated on the left and on the right, but there is also an acknowledgement among at least those who are respectful and appreciate the integrity of the process that this does take time. Counter to that, the folks like Kari Lake, you heard her herself, suggesting without evidence that county officials are intentionally slow-walking this. A prominent state senator here, Wendy Rogers, is calling for a rally to be a Rise Up rally to be held outside of this county tabulation center here tomorrow at noon. It's not quite clear what they're rising up against because nobody has presented any evidence of fraud or irregularities, and nobody has alleged any specific issues here with the elections. But yet, these are folks that are not happy that they are in the deficit right now. Of course, once these ballots are counted, it'll be clear whether any of these Republicans will win the statewide office. As we look from these results right now, the Republicans are still very much in it, and that is why everybody's waiting for these ballots to be counted.
And briefly, Vaughn, we just showed that graphic with a number of 2020 election deniers who have been prominent in the races in Arizona. How is that election denial playing now, especially considering that these races appear to be rather close?
Right, and that is why I asked the explicit question of the county officials here just about an hour ago. Have any of the campaigns suggested to you that there was fraud or irregularities? And here on Friday afternoon, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days later, no evidence and no allegations have been presented to them. Yet these are folks that have a history of suggesting that the 2020 election was rigged or stolen. They never provided credible evidence to suggest that that actually was the case. Yet the concern here is that they would try to do that again in 2022. Of course, each of these individuals still is hopeful that the ballot count will come out in their favor. Perhaps that's why they aren't making those claims now. But at this point here, they have provided no evidence that would allow these individuals to try to deny that this is an accurate election here. Of course, that is why a lot of our ears are perked up and will be here in the days ahead if, in fact, any of these Republicans were to not pull out victories here in these races.
All right. Thank you, Vaughn. That's NBC political reporter Vaughn Hilliard starting us off tonight from Phoenix. We're also watching the vote counting in Nevada tonight. Our decision desk has characterized the Senate race there as too close to call. Republican candidate Adam Laxalt is, as you can see, just barely ahead of Democratic incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto. Officials are still working through tens of thousands of ballots. Meanwhile, the Nevada governor's race, we're characterizing that as too early to call. Republican Joe Lombardo, he is the sheriff in the Las Vegas area, is ahead of the Democratic incumbent governor, Steve Sisolak. Let's continue now with NBC's Gary Grumbach, who joins us from North Las Vegas, just outside the Clark County Election Center. Gary, where do things stand now in terms of both the vote counts that we've received and the officials' plans for how to work through the weekend?
Yeah, we are getting closer and closer to a result, Joshua. Just in the last hour, we got the big batch of votes that we were hoping for all day, and it was a big batch, 27,300 to be exact. Cortez Masto received 17,000 of those. Adam Laxalt, the Republican, received 9,000 of those, and this means not counting provisional or uncured ballots. It means there's 23,000 votes left to count here in Clark County. That's it. And knock on wood here, Joshua, but there haven't been any issues with counting ballots here in the county so far. Here's what Joe Gloria, the registrar of voters here in Clark County, had to say earlier today to our own Stephanie Gosk.
We should have the majority of the ballot, barring any equipment failures, which they've been working really well. We had them serviced before the election. They've been working really well. I don't anticipate that, but we should have them in tomorrow for a final
and it would be the same
report.
Schedule, evening tabulation, like you've been doing every day.
Well, if we finish and it's 3 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and report.
So we've gotten into a little bit of a rhythm here outside of the Clark County Board of Elections office. They make a batch announcement during the day at a press conference, and then they announce the batch later on that evening. We expect the same thing to happen tomorrow. Joshua?
Yeah, another rhythm that we have gotten into, both where you are in Nevada and where Vaughn is in Arizona, has to do with sowing doubt over the quality of the counting. We heard from Republican Senator Lindsey Graham reportedly saying yesterday that if Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent Democratic senator, wins, that it is a lie. He said, quote, "There is no mathematical way Laxalt loses," unquote. That is not the case, at least by our math. That's why we have not called this race one way or the other. How are folks there reacting to some of the doubt, to some of the statements that have been made around the integrity of this count?
Yeah, I just want to say there has been no actual fraud. There has been no actual corruption in this race. We have not seen any. No other reputable news organization has seen any. And Republican Adam Laxalt leads, as you can see right there, by 0.1% right now. And that has shrunk over the past few days because every single batch that we are getting, regardless of the size, is splitting for Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, about 60%. So more and more, as more and more of that comes in, we're going to see that likely continue. And as decision desks do, they like to see trends before they make an announcement. We're certainly seeing a trend here. Joshua?
And before I let you go, have we heard anything more from the candidates? Or are they just kind of laying low and waiting for the vote counts to come in?
So it's a little bit of laying low. We haven't heard anything from Catherine Cortez Masto. She's even been quiet on Twitter. The Republican Adam Laxalt was on Tucker Carlson last night, and he did not make any claims of corruption, did not make any claims of fraud, which is actually different than what he did in 2020 when he was standing right where I was in 2020, claiming there was lots of fraud and lots of corruption in the 2020 election that he wasn't even a candidate in. So he seems to be mum on that, but he says he's confident he's going to win this election. Joshua?
All right. Thank you, Gary. That's NBC's Gary Grumbach joining us from the Clark County Election Center in North Las Vegas. So we've checked in on Arizona and Nevada. Now we got to go to Georgia. It has counted enough votes to force a runoff in the race for the Senate. Voters will choose between Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker, and the runoff is set for December 6th. Both candidates are back on the trail, making their cases to voters.
Now, we all knew this election would be close, but I've done this before. We've done this before. We know how to win a runoff.
You got to get out and vote. You got to get out and vote because, you know, he hung around and got into this runoff, and he thinking he's going to win. We need to prove him wrong and let him get out of that office. He don't deserve to be in that office representing Georgia.
NBC's Antonia Hilton has more from Atlanta.
Here in Georgia, both campaigns are already hitting the ground running. They all say that they're fired up and looking ahead to December 6th now. Just last night, the Walker camp held an event in Canton, Georgia, where the candidates sat side by side with Senator Ted Cruz. Interestingly, a colleague of Senator Warnock that he often talks about on the road as someone who he works with in a bipartisan fashion. The Warnock camp held their own event here in Atlanta, where he spelled out a bit of a new message, where he talked about this as a race that's going to be about competence and character, right and wrong. He's clearly going for some of these middle-of-the-road voters, the type of split-ticket voters who may have voted for Republican Kemp at the top of the ticket, but then split for him instead of Herschel Walker. And his camp tells me that they're feeling really confident right now. They think that the wind is now behind Raphael Warnock's back. And that's because they're looking at the data from Tuesday and seeing that Herschel Walker underperformed other statewide Republicans, and that this red wave everyone talked about, frankly, just did not happen. Take a listen to some of Warnock's message at his event.
So here's what this race is about, Georgia. It's about competence and it's about character. It's about both of those things.
Make it plain, bro. Make it plain.
We need to be clear. This is not simply about passing this law or passing that law, and it's certainly not about the process of Washington, D.C. This is about who we are as Georgians. The choice could not be more clear between me and Herschel Walker. Some things in life are complicated. This ain't one of them.
The December 6th runoff date is less than 4 weeks away now, and no newly registered voters can take part, which means both sides need to really fire up their base and get them engaged and make sure that they know they need to participate and vote a second time for their candidate. The election day is December 6th, but early voting is going to start just a couple days after Thanksgiving, and this time there's going to be no percent cutoff here. No one has to reach 50%. It's just winner takes all, who has the most votes. Back to you.
That was NBC's Antonia Hilton reporting from Atlanta. Still to come, the Republican Party's future. Where will the GOP go from here, especially if former President Trump seeks another term? We're glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. So now that the midterms are winding down, what's next for the Republican Party? Even some Republicans say they're not sure. That red wave of overwhelming GOP victories did not really happen. And the party standard bearer has an announcement to make next week from Mar-a-Lago. Longtime advisor Jason Miller claims that former President Trump will run in 2024.
President Trump is going to announce on Tuesday that he's running for president, and it's going to be a very professional, very buttoned-up announcement. Did a run-through this morning with the logistics team to have some great folks that are on board.
So far, Mr. Trump's team is just calling it a special announcement. Some Republicans do not seem excited for him to run again.
This is a time that Donald Trump is no doubt in the rearview mirror, and it's time to move on with the party. It's time to move on with candidate quality. I think Donald Trump's moving from a movement to a distraction for the Republican Party now.
A true leader understands when they have become a liability. A true leader understands that it's time to step off the stage, and the voters have given us that very clear message.
And a number of candidates who the former president endorsed lost their races. So, what would remaining aligned with Trump mean for the Republican Party's future? What do GOP voters want? If not him, who? Joining us now is political contributor and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio. Susan, good to see you tonight. Welcome.
Great to be with you, Joshua.
So I'm kind of amazed at how quickly things have kind of turned for former President Trump in terms of the vocal reactions to the midterms. What do you make of people suddenly, at least publicly, trying to wash their hands of him?
Well, I think those Republican elected officials and people who want to seek higher office and believe there's a future for themselves are distancing themselves from Donald Trump. those who know that their careers are winding down or they have nothing else to hang their hat on are going to stay with Donald Trump because they've got nothing else and they just want to try and hang on as long as they can. You know, make no mistake about it, Donald Trump or Trumpism isn't just going to go away by 2024. It doesn't matter if Trump runs or doesn't run. It is going to take a while for this party to, frankly, burn itself down so it can be rebuilt without the stink of Trump.
Dig in on that point a little bit in terms of the party not necessarily needing Donald Trump, because I feel like one of the things that has happened since 2015, when he descended that gold escalator and announced he was running for president, is reshaping the party such that kind of the vocabulary of being a Trump Republican or the policy profile is already kind of cast. You almost don't need him anymore because we sort of know what today's mainstream Republican has to do to get the attention of the electorate. So I guess I'm trying to think through how much energy to put on this. Like, he kind of reshaped the party. They've already kind of figured out the new strategy, the new persona to be a Republican candidate. Maybe they don't need him anymore.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think he created the rhetoric. He created the us versus them, the ugliest side of the Republican Party, but he didn't create policy. I mean, there's not one policy that Donald Trump stands behind unless it's about him. So I think that there's actually a lot of room for Republicans, especially going forward, to maybe get back to some of those traditional Republican policy issues and not just worry about if they're going to get a tweet or a zing against from Donald Trump. They can move on. They just have to have the will because, again, like you said, Donald Trump, it's all been out there. Everything, the table's set. It's just a matter of who's going to be invited to sit around it.
I wonder also about the economics politically of the former president's future in the Republican Party. I mean, there was a point at which if you had Donald Trump's blessing, you had a higher profile among Republican voters, conservative political circles, the Fox News channel, more money flowed into your campaign. Like, there were all kinds of downstream effects of being part of that political machinery. Now you've got people like, say, Mike Pence, who's releasing a book on Tuesday, the same day as the former president's announcement. Ron DeSantis, who just won a second term as Florida's governor, who's got his own kind of machinery, allegedly, supposedly building behind him. How about that piece of this? Just the logistics of raw politics and the money that makes the wheels move.
Well, you know, we see this more recently. If there's a hook, there's a way of getting money. The money is always there. It's just a matter of how it's allocated. Right now, Trump is the one who really gets it, and people are still donating to him. But when we start looking at DeSantis, people look for a future. Donald Trump doesn't represent the future. They see DeSantis, whether or not you agree with him or not. A lot of people in the Republican Party do. They kind of see him as someone who doesn't have the Trump baggage, but maybe can bring some of the Trump energy, if you will, to the party. I happen to think he has a glass jaw, DeSantis, and I'm not sure what he can really do. I don't see him managing a crowd the way Donald Trump did. But when it comes to the money, you know, look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says something ridiculous, and all of a sudden she could raise $500,000 off of it. There's no cornering on hate or stupidity, and people will give to it.
I will be interested to see how Ron DeSantis does, as you pointed out, if he does try to go to a larger national political sphere. Florida politics is very different than national politics in terms of just being a Republican. There are kind of structural advantages to be a Republican in Florida in some ways. But before I have to let you go, there are some other issues that I think Republicans are looking to in the near term, including who the leaders are going to be if Republicans take the House or the Senate. Senator Marco Rubio has asked to postpone next week's Senate GOP leadership vote, saying that they need to make sure that the people who are leading, quote, are genuinely committed to fighting for the priorities and values of the working Americans who gave us big wins in states like Florida, unquote. Before I got to let you go, Susan, what about that? Just the leadership fights in Congress that might be materializing.
Well, I think on the Senate side, I don't know that Mitch McConnell even wants to fight to be minority leader, which it looks like he will be again, thanks to Donald Trump. And he may take it and then resign within the year. On the House side, it's really interesting. Kevin McCarthy has a lot of problems with such a slim potential majority. I mean, it doesn't look like it could be more than 5 votes. So he has a lot of people he would have to placate. And I'm not sure that he won't get thrown under the bus. Donald Trump wants him to, pledge allegiance and endorse him today practically for president. And I don't think McCarthy's ready to do that now because he'll lose votes on the other side. So he may not even have a future. He's done this would be the second time it happened to him, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Susan Del Percio, appreciate you talking this through with us tonight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Another Trump campaign would impact a lot of people, but a Justice Department investigation, that could impact him in a lot of ways. Suppose Attorney General Merrick Garland pressed charges over the top secret documents recovered from Mar-a-Lago. What would that mean for the former president, especially if he is indicted? Sources close to Garland say that the political or social ramifications are not factors for him, nor is the potential for violent backlash. NBC Justice correspondent Ken Delanian has more. Hey, Ken.
There are signs the Mar-a-Lago case is moving closer to a charging decision, Joshua, including the fact that the Justice Department recently brought in 2 new prosecutors with lots of trial experience. People inside the DOJ's deliberations in this case tell me the main factors driving the decision about whether to charge Trump are whether the facts and the law support a successful prosecution and whether anyone else who did what Trump is accused of doing would have been prosecuted. The sources say Justice Department officials are looking carefully at past cases involving the mishandling of classified material, and there are a lot of them. In February, a Hawaii woman was sentenced to 3 months in prison after taking home classified records from her job at the U.S. military's Pacific Command. And just last week, an FBI analyst in Kansas City pleaded guilty to a felony after admitting taking home around 386 classified documents over a period of 12 years. She faces up to 10 years in prison. And what's also noteworthy about that case is that it was prosecuted by David Raskin, an experienced terrorism prosecutor who has been advising the Mar-a-Lago team. Legal experts tell me that based on the evidence made public so far, it's likely that anyone else in Trump's position would have been charged, and that fact appears to be weighing heavily on the Justice Department officials who are now deciding how to proceed in this case. Joshua?
Thank you, Ken. That's NBC's Ken Delanian reporting. Breaking news now in one of the races that we have been watching in one of the states that is still counting votes, the state of Nevada. Thus far, NBC News has not called the race, but we have just received a concession statement from the incumbent governor, Steve Sisolak. At the moment, we are characterizing this race as too early to call, but it seems that the governor is calling it himself. His statement reads in part, quote, "While it seems I will come up short at the polls, I am excited that Senator Cortez Masto," that's Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent Democrat there, is on a path to win. We need her strong voice on behalf of our state in Washington. He goes on to write, quote, "It has been the honor of my life to be your governor, and I want to thank you for giving me this incredible opportunity to serve," unquote. So Governor Steve Sisolak has just conceded the race for governor in Nevada. He had been hoping to continue a number of the policies that he had started under his governorship, including economic policies to try to get hotel workers and entertainment workers in Las Vegas and the Reno areas through COVID, additional economic development projects, the fact that Nevada is fighting over water supplies in Lake Mead, a lot of things on his policy agenda he had been hoping to move forward with. But now it seems that he will stand aside and allow the sheriff in Clark County, Joe Lombardo, who oversees Las Vegas's Metropolitan Police Department, to become the new governor of Nevada. To be clear, NBC News has not called this race yet, but the governor of Nevada, Steve Sisolak, has just released a statement conceding the governor's race in Nevada. We will get to some of today's other top stories in just a moment, including the lingering effects of Hurricane Nicole and Ian in Florida, what President Biden is promising to do now about climate change, and the death of the Dark Knight, the voice actor who generations knew as Batman. Tonight's headlines begin with Tropical Depression Nicole, what's left of it. The storm hit Florida as a hurricane. Now it's moving northeast, bringing heavy rain, wind, and the threat of tornadoes. Meanwhile, North Dakota got its first blizzard of the season. Yesterday, the state capital, Bismarck, got a record-breaking 17 inches of snow. Forecasters say that storm system could merge with Nicole's remnants, and that could bring some serious cold to the Midwest and the Northeast. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns is tracking it all for us. Hey, Bill.
Well, we have 12 more hours of problems with what's left of Nicole. We've had issues with tornadoes today. We were a really scary situation earlier this afternoon where the tornado sirens are going off in Richmond, Virginia, as a possible tornado was going through town. Thankfully, just some wind damage and no confirmation of that tornado, but it was scary. And then we've had some very heavy rains in the mountains of North Carolina. We've had flash flood warnings during the day today, and there's still isolated chance for some additional flash flooding tonight as all the heavy rain continues to track up through portions of the Northeast. So here's that area of concern where we had all the heavy rain between Asheville and Boone. Notice the rain is ending in that region, so that's great. Still have that flash flood watch that's up, but this will be leaving us as we go throughout the next couple hours, especially with the rain there. But we had one location that picked up almost 5 inches of rain during the day today. So what's next? Well, the airports are still a mess because of all the heavy rain and the gusty winds. We have at least hour, 2-hour delays, areas like Newark Airport, LaGuardia, and we're still going to see some airport delays and ground stops as these storms and heavy downpours move up through the Northeast into New England. Things will be improving from D.C. southwards for the late evening flights and the overnight. And the winds are going to pick up. So if you're sleeping, you may hear the house shaking a little bit, especially in Long Island and southern portions of New England. We're going to see wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour during the overnight hours and early tomorrow morning. So that means isolated power outages. We shouldn't see them widespread with winds that strong. So here's the timing of everything overnight. When everyone wakes up at 8 a.m., the storm is exiting. I mean, we're done in New York, done in Philly, done in D.C., just some leftover heavy rain, New Hampshire, possibly Boston and out on Cape Cod. And then by the time we go through Saturday afternoon, this storm kicks out quickly. It's going to be windy and cooler Saturday afternoon, but dry everywhere through portions of the Northeast. So that's great. So as far as the forecast for your weekend is going to go, again, watching Nicole exit, we could even see some snow, much colder conditions in the Ohio Valley with some snow squalls possible, drying out in the Southeast. And by the time we get to Sunday, the big story is going to be that cool chill that's going to dominate the country as we go into next week, Joshua. So we go from a tropical threat to chilly, cold, winter-like weather.
From one extreme to the other. Thank you, Bill. That's NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns with your forecast. Well, Nicole was America's first November hurricane in almost 40 years. This late-season storm was especially bad for Floridians who are still cleaning up from Hurricane Ian. In Volusia County, that's the Daytona Beach area, officials say Nicole caused 5 deaths. It destroyed at least 49 beachfront homes and hotels. A tweet from the account of Volusia County's sheriff describes the damage as almost impossible to comprehend. NBC's Kerry Sanders has more from Daytona Beach.
Joshua, when you choose a place to live, you have to put in a calculation about Mother Nature and what those threats are. And increasingly in Florida, it can feel as if the hurricane threat is number one on the list, not only because of the damage that it can cause, but what it does to your pocketbook. Once again, Florida bears the brunt of intensifying extreme weather events. Nicole making landfall in the month November. The last time that happened was 37 years ago. Mike and Paula Stratton recently moved to Vero Beach and have just experienced their first hurricane.
The beach is gone right now, so that's pretty amazing. That happened in one day.
Others, like residents of Volusia County, now left with little choice after the storm eroded the entire beach.
Total devastation. We are having to call people and let them know they can't come home. It was that same trifecta of Ian, King Tide, then Nicole, and it just made us so unstable that things just started collapsing.
Just over a month ago, Hurricane Ian, a Category 4, devastated entire neighborhoods in southwest Florida.
Wow. This is unbelievable.
Brendan and Mary Ellen Flaherty lost everything they owned when Hurricane Ian hit their home on Sanibel Island. A perfect storm that not only flooded their home, a generator malfunction set their house on fire, claiming the life of a loved one.
My mom
was here, and she had dementia. It was really hard for her to understand what was going on. And I said, there's a fire, and we got to go, because otherwise we're going to die here.
Now, like hundreds of Floridians, they were in the midst of rebuilding their home, aware that it'll never be back to its former glory.
It was just a beautiful house, but now we're only being covered for
half of what it's worth.
Part of the problem, the rising cost of home insurance premiums in this state.
Even long before 2 hurricanes struck the state of Florida, we were facing a treacherous property insurance market in Florida. This is because of a man-made crisis driven by roof replacement fraud schemes combined with excessive levels of litigation filed against insurers.
According to the Insurance Information Institute, Floridians pay the highest home insurance premiums in the U.S. and average $4,231 per year, 3 times higher than the national average. The Treasury's Federal Insurance Office announced in late October it will begin assessing how extreme weather events might impact the cost of insurance in the U.S., saying the recent impacts in Florida from Hurricane Ian demonstrate the critical nature of this work and the need for an increased understanding of insurance market vulnerabilities.
At this point, we're not sure what the Federal Insurance Office is going to do with this data, but insurance is a state-regulated matter. It's not a federal-regulated matter. So the federal government will not set rates for insurance in Florida or any other state.
And with more intense and more frequent hurricanes expected, it's no surprise that some Florida residents, like Brendan and Mary Ellen, are considering relocation.
I would really think about getting out of, building the house and selling it and getting out of there, because if that's going to get worse, I couldn't take another one.
I'm out of the tropical depression. See ya. TD, anything, I'm goodbye.
For those who were hit here first by Ian and now Nicole, the insurance nightmare, it's really difficult because you have to document the new damage to make a claim on top of the documented old damage. But if there is any silver lining, it is that the deductible on your insurance from the first storm has the second storm covered. Joshua?
Thank you, Kerry. That's NBC's Kerry Sanders reporting from Daytona Beach. Let's take you back to that Nevada governor's race, which now we can confidently project. NBC News is projecting the Democrat Steve Sisolak will not win another term, and it will go to the Republican opponent, Joe Lombardo, who is the sheriff of Clark County. This is a Republican pickup in governor's races. So we began the night with a Democratic pickup in Oregon, and now we've got a Republican pickup in Nevada. This is a race that we just got the concession statement from Governor Sisolak for. He said in that statement that he is excited for incumbent Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto to win. He writes, quote, "We need her strong voice on behalf of our state in Washington. But I want to underscore, we're still waiting for ballots to come in Nevada. We haven't called the Senate race yet. We still find that too close to call between her and Republican Adam Laxalt, just a hair's breadth between them. And as Gary Grumbach told us earlier tonight, we're expecting another statement from Clark County, Nevada, that's the Las Vegas area, tomorrow. And then after that statement, we will get another tranche of votes. So we're still working on calling that. We haven't called the Secretary of State's race in Nevada yet, too early to call. We did call the Lieutenant Governor's race in Nevada, and we are projecting that Republican Stavros Anthony will win that race. So now NBC News is projecting that Republicans will pick up the governor's race in the state of Nevada. Steve Sisolak is conceding in that, and the sheriff of Clark County, Joe Lombardo, we're projecting will be the next governor of Nevada. Let's move on to climate change. World leaders are in Egypt discussing plans to fight it. A new report estimates that we've got about 9 years to avoid catastrophe. The Global Carbon Project says the atmosphere will receive a record high amount of carbon dioxide this year, more than 36 billion tons from burning coal, oil, and natural gas. The Earth is on track to exceed the amount of carbon dioxide it can burn and still meet key climate goals. President Biden's at the climate summit demanding more from his counterparts. NBC's Carol Lee has more.
President Biden began his overseas trip by trying to rally other countries around the world to take significant steps to address climate change. The president making the case during a stop in Egypt that the U.S. is really leading on this issue. From there, it's a long weekend and a long week ahead for the president. He'll have meeting with Southeast Asian leaders. He'll also meet here in Cambodia with the leaders of Japan and South Korea. North Korea and its recent provocations will be top of mind during that meeting. And then the president heads to Bali, where all eyes are on that G20 summit. The president is expected to try to continue to rally support for Ukraine among world leaders and for them to isolate Russia even further. Russian President Vladimir Putin has decided not to attend the G20 summit, but the president will have a very significant high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It's the first time these two leaders are meeting face-to-face since President Biden took office. There's a number of things on the agenda, from trade to climate change to China's relationship with Russia. White House officials are really downplaying expectations for this, saying there's not going to be significant announcements coming out of this meeting. Rather, they say that the president and the president of China are going to try to get a feel for where each other stands on all of those hot-button issues. And hanging over all of this are those midterm election results where the president is feeling like he's gotten some politically emboldened from the results going better for his party than had been expected. Back to you.
That's NBC's Carol Lee reporting. And before we keep going, just want to correct something I just said. I mentioned a Democratic pickup in governor's races. That was in Massachusetts, not in Oregon. That's where projecting Maura Healey to win. Republican Charlie Baker had been the governor. So Massachusetts rather than Oregon. Sorry about that. Pop culture fans are remembering one of the most beloved actors in animation. Kevin Conroy, known for decades as the voice of Batman, died yesterday after being diagnosed with cancer. His deep, raspy tone was perfect for the Art Deco masterpiece, Batman the Animated Series. Mr. Conroy voiced the Dark Knight in almost 60 productions and video games. My inner 12-year-old is both very happy and very sad right now. Also because Conroy wrote about his experiences as a gay man in a special DC Comics Pride edition this year. He is survived by his husband, sister, and brother. Memorial services are still in the works. Kevin Conroy lived to be 66. Up next, abortion on campus. Universities are dealing with the overturning of Roe versus Wade in different ways. Months after that ruling, some are still learning how to deal with the fallout. You'll see how students are stepping in just ahead. Stay close. It's been months since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. We're still feeling its effects, including in the midterms. This week, 5 states voted on abortion-related ballot measures. In all 5, we are projecting that voters decided to protect abortion access. The politics of abortion are also showing up on college campuses, figuring out what to do for their students. NBC medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal has the story.
Niharika Rao is a Barnard College student and the co-founder of the Reproductive Justice Collective.
It's not just the red states, is what I think we're trying to say.
It's a student-led organization that advocated for the New York City-based women's college to provide abortion pills for students.
The court overturning Roe wasn't a surprise. It was something they had indicated that they were about to do since Planned Parenthood v. Casey.
Months after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Barnard released a memo saying it will make sure that campus providers are prepared and trained in the provision of medication abortion by fall 2023.
What did it feel like when you saw that memo come out?
It felt really good to know that access was going to be a reality.
Dobbs has changed the entire abortion landscape in America. More and more people are coming to New York as it is a destination state.
Other higher education institutions across the country are moving in a different direction.
Abolish abortion!
The University of Idaho's General Counsel sent a memo warning employees that promoting abortions is against the state's law, according to the Idaho Capital Sun. A university spokesperson said in an email to the Capital Sun, in part, quote, employees engaging in their course of work in a manner that favors abortion could be deemed as promoting abortion. We reached out to the University of Idaho. It declined to comment.
What do we do?
Women in their 20s account for more than half of abortions, according to 2019 data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. But the Reproductive Justice Collective is thinking beyond the gates of Barnard.
We're doing a statewide legislative effort to pass a bill for abortion pills on campus across New York, and we're working with folks from SUNY and CUNY campuses.
And while some student groups, like theirs, are working to provide abortion services for students on campus, other college student groups are doing the opposite.
We are the Polaris Generation!
Students for Life for America is an anti-abortion advocacy organization serving more than 1,000 campus groups with representation in all 50 states. It is against colleges providing abortion pills.
I'm in college, having the thought of having those available to even my friends and having to go through that in a college dorm setting is just absolutely heartbreaking.
2 states made it a law. Massachusetts is requiring public colleges and universities to submit plans for providing medication abortions by next November. And in California, public colleges and universities are required to offer the pills by this January. Barnard sees ripple effects of the Roe v. Wade decision, saying in its memo it will likely decrease college accessibility, result in lower graduation rates, and derail employment trajectories.
I think it's important to keep in mind that even if the university or even if the highest court in our land does something, there's still possibilities, and people who want to get abortions can get abortions and will always have options.
Dr. Akshay Sayal, NBC News.
This weekend marks the 40th anniversary of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Harry Smith looks back at how veterans dealt with the war's complicated legacy before we go. Today is Veterans Day, a moment to honor the sacrifices of America's service members and their families. This Sunday will mark 40 years since the opening of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. It's been a source of comfort and the target of controversy. Here's NBC's Harry Smith.
Vietnam almost tore this country apart. The sacrifice, the protests, the deception. Divisive doesn't begin to describe it.
The Vietnam War should stop, and the best way to stop it is for the United States to simply pack up and get out of Vietnam right now.
Yet less than a decade after the fighting stopped, a memorial was built, willed into existence by Vietnam veteran Jan Scruggs.
So Jan Scruggs and these veterans got land from Congress, and they set up this competition.
A design competition.
They had the top great architects on the jury, and then they said anyone over 18 could enter.
Among the contestants, college junior Maya Lin. The veterans had only one requirement. The memorial must include the names of those who lost their lives.
I actually deliberately did not read anything about the politics of the war because I thought it should be about the individual lives lost.
Lin's winning design was controversial. Some thought it morbid, hideous, insufficient. Its effect, quite the opposite.
You react to it like a book. How do we read a book? Intimately, personally. You connect one-on-one, no matter how many people might be around you. It connects to people in a quiet, personal way, which I think we need.
3 million visitors a year agree, including men we spoke with at the wall, veterans Bill Gray and Art Wong.
Now everybody wants to come, which I'm grateful. They're acknowledging us now.
Everybody's got our own separate story. And then we've got 58,200 plus, and it's like this. Family, parents, kids the vets never knew.
It's important to remember those who came home were not greeted as victors. Marine Howard Clark.
As far as caring about us, no one really cared. They didn't have that ear to hear.
On weekends, except during the winter, you'll see people here washing the wall. It was Art and another vet's idea 30 years ago. It's become ritual, cleansing and catharsis. Veteran Imants Seltnieks.
It makes me feel good to wash the wall. It's like, I don't know, polishing your boots, make them shine real good. Be proud of them. And that's why I'm very proud of every man on that wall. Start, sir.
A veteran Jan Scruggs, whose dream this was, he still comes.
Making physical contact with these names
for me and for a lot of people has given them such an emotional experience. They are able to sort of heal from their PTSD.
A place of sanctuary, of solace, of gratitude. In memoriam.
That was NBC's Harry Smith reporting. Thank you for making time for us on this Veterans Day. Please do stay in touch with us by email, voicemail, or social media. And if I were you, I would stay close to the NBC News app or NBCnews.com for the possibility of more calls as we get more votes from Arizona. Vaughn Hilliard told us we're expecting more soon. We'll see if we're able to call any of those races. But until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.